Hey everyone, so the theme of this Mercury Retrograde in Cancer on the 29th of June 2026 is the conversations that we've been having with ourselves that are about to get louder. So Mercury, the planet that rules how you think. Oh, and by the way, I'm Imani, your holistic astrological life coach. So Mercury, the planet that rules how you think, speak, process and make sense of the world, has just stopped moving forward in the most emotionally sensitive sign of the zodiac, which is Cancer, right? So this isn't just one planet reviewing one area of your life. This is a collective pause button being pressed across your emotional foundations, your power structures, your dreams and your discipline all at once. But the main event is Mercury, and in Cancer, Mercury retrograde becomes less about technological glitches and missed emails and more about conversations you never had, the feelings you never named, the family patterns you never questioned. So yeah, let's get into it. The upside is that it's exceptional for revisiting family conversations, processing old emotions that got stuck, understanding childhood patterns at a deeper level, reconnecting with people from your past who matter, and finally hearing what your body has been trying to tell you. Your intuition can get louder than your logic right now, and that's the point, because it's Mercury rules Gemini, but it's in Cancer. So the challenge is that communication can get more emotionally charged because of this. You say what you feel before you think it through, and there's other planets in retrograde which are going to influence this. Tell you all about them in a while, but yeah, you say what you feel before you think it through. Old family dynamics can replay in current relationships. Being overly sentimental, nostalgic can become a trap, thinking, oh, maybe I should go back to the past, call that ex, and then come back in your life and do the same crap. Yeah, if people have changed, let them back in, but if they are the same still, then there's going to be more rubbish for you to heal from. So yeah, there can also be technology and travel disruptions, which are the classic Mercury retrograde signatures, right? Classic Mercury, technology and travel changes and disruptions. But in Cancer, they can feel more personal, like the universe is specifically targeting your sense of safety. So what's the difference between Mercury direct and Mercury retrograde? Well, when Mercury's direct, communication can flow forward more easier, new ideas can be welcomed typically, we can sign contracts, launch projects, buy technology, travel with confidence and have more of an external focus with our communication. And what we say matters more than what we think. But with Mercury retrograde, communication turns inward, so we have to review existing ideas rather than generate new ones. And of course, for some of you were born with Mercury retrograde, so it's the opposite. When Mercury's direct, it's not a good time for you to sign contracts, but when it's retrograde, it is. So it all depends on your personal energy and natal chart, and life be life, and then sometimes we have to sign that contract in retrograde and lose the deal. But making sure we read the fine print and all of that, we should, though, if we can, avoid launching new ventures, signing them contracts, especially major ones, or buying expensive technology, unless we've done the research and the necessary. Our laptop breaks down, it can't be fixed, we have to get a new one, So Mercury retrograde has more of an internal focus, and what you think matters more than what you say. So the astrological lowdown, what is it all about, Mercury retrograde, Alfie and all of that. So on the 29th of June, that's when Mercury's going retrograde at 6:36 British summer time, and it's in the second degree of Cancer. So it can make us prefer more emotional communication over logical communication. And it's in the Natsakra Parnavusu, Pada 4, that rules the 0 to 3.20 degrees of Cancer in Vedic astrology, and the deity is Aditi, the cosmic mother, infinite abundance, and this Natsakra is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's in Cancer right now, so that's bringing that energy over here. And this Namvasa is also ruled by Cancer, so it's at home here, this Mercury retrograde, and it's allowing us to have an emotional, receptive communication and wisdom. And the Sakti, the power, is Vastuva Prapana, the power to gain wealth, substance again after a loss, and to restore what we have lost. So, as I said, it's happening at 6, 10:36 p.m. British Summer Time. On the 29th of June, Pacific Time 10:36 a.m, Mountain Time 11:36 a.m, Central Time 12:36 p.m, Eastern Time 1:36 p.m, European Time 7:36 p.m, Indian Time 11:06 p.m, and Australian Eastern Time 3:36 a.m, right? So the Sabian symbology is that Arctic explorer leads a reindeer through icy canyons, and I'm going to tell you what all that means later. It rules the 8th rib in the human body, and the key aspects is Mercury's making a conjunction with Jupiter, so that's going to flavour the whole sort of like energy of this retrograde. Mercury's also making a square to Chiron and a biquintal to the moon's north node. There's a few T-squares between Pluto, Chiron, Jupiter, the midhaven, the moon and Neptune, the ascendant, the north node, and Mars and Uranus. So Mercury is in Cancer, then it retrogrades into Gemini on the 7th of July, then it goes direct out of retrograde in Gemini on the 23rd of July, and it re-enters Cancer on the 5th of August, right? So that's its whole journey. And, you know, we've got some retrogrades, as I said. So we've got Pluto retrograde in Capricorn that happened when it went into retrograde on the 6th of May. Neptune went retrograde. What day are we on? No, it's going retrograde on the 7th of July, and Saturn's going retrograde on the 26th of July. That's actually what's happening. So we've only got Pluto there right now. So, yep, as I said, maybe you thought that your processing was done about something. Maybe you thought the feelings had been felt, the conversations had been had, the family stuff had been handled this year or another year. But Mercury retrograding at 2.2 minute 3rd degree of Cancer is about to show you exactly how much was left unsaid. Some of you have been talking around the real issues for months, using logic to manage what needs tears, using distance to manage what needs closeness, using busyness to avoid the conversations that have been sitting on your chest since childhood, and this retrograde isn't going to let you keep doing that. Some of you have been communicating beautifully on the surface, whilst your inner world tells a complete different story. The words come out fine, but the body says something else. You know, tight chest, clenched jaw, the thing you swallowed instead of speaking. And Mercury retrograde in Cancer is when the body starts speaking louder than the mouth, you know. So some of you are about to hear from someone you haven't heard for in a while, and it's a family member, old version of yourself showing up in dreams or memories, or that song that keeps playing. This isn't a coincidence. Mercury retrograde in the sign of memory and home always brings the past back for review. The question isn't about whether it returns, the question is what you do when it does. So whether you're mid-conversation or mid-avoidance, whether you're deep in family healing or running from it, whether your communication has been thawing or frozen, Mercury stationary retrograde in Cancer is asking you to go back inside, you know, before you go back outside and move forward further, right? This isn't about delay, it's about rethinking and depth, right? Getting it right. So when Mercury stations retrograde on the 29th of June, it doesn't do so in isolation, as I said. So Pluto's already retrograde. It entered its pre-saddle on the 11th of January. It went retrograde on the 6th of May. It's going direct on the 16th of October 2026, and it's leaving its retrograde zone on the 7th of February 2027. So why am I mentioning this? Well, because it allows us to have a deeper judgment of our internal power, and our relationship with control, authority and institutional power is being reviewed from the inside out. So Mercury's allowing us to go even deeper, right? And Pluto's assisting us with transforming our communication. Neptune retrograde goes retrograde 8 days after Mercury goes retrograde, right? So Neptune entered its pre-saddle on the 16th of March 2026. It goes retrograde on the 7th of July, staying there to the 12th of December, and it leaves its retrograde zone on the 3rd of April 2027. So this is the planet of dreams, illusions and spiritual desire and longing turns inward, and Mercury is already scrambling our emotional communication. So expect the veil, the line between reality and fantasy, to get more thinner and blurred. So we have to make sure we do grounded practices, check facts and all of that. But Saturn helps us with this discipline. It goes retrograde on the 26th of July, completing the retrograde energy, right? And the universe is saying, start moving forward, check your foundations, and Saturn's bringing the discipline for us to do so. So the main event, yay, Mercury retrograde, right? This is what we're talking about. Mercury entered its pre-shadow phase on the 13th of June in Gemini. So you may have already been feeling the retrograde energy from then. Then it enters Cancer on the 22nd, and then it goes retrograde on the 29th. That's where we are today, or whenever you're listening to this. Then it goes back into Gemini on the 7th of July. Then it goes direct on the 23rd of July, but it also makes a conjunction to Jupiter on the 12th of July, which is the second conjunction it makes to Jupiter. Then on the 2nd of August, it makes another conjunction to Jupiter as well. So a lot of Jupiter energy, and Jupiter's in Cancer, so like I said, they're working together. Mercury goes back into Cancer for good on the 5th of August, and then it exits, then comes out of the post-shadow zone on the 7th of August, so things will be more clearer. So you may feel this retrograde, even though it does end on the 23rd of July right up until the 7th of August, right? So the total cycle is 56 days, and something extraordinary in the timeline, as I said, is Mercury is conjuncting 3 times to Jupiter during this cycle. On the 17th of June pre-retrograde, on the 12th of July during retrograde, and the 2nd of August post-retrograde. 3 meetings between the messenger and the teacher, right? 3 opportunities to align your thinking with your emotional truth. So we'll come back to this a little later, but now I'm just going to talk more about the energetic frequency and what this actually feels like on the energetic level. So Mercury in Cancer thinks through feelings, right? It doesn't analyse and then feel. It feels, then makes sense of what it felt. Every thought is soaked in emotion. Every conversation carries an undercurrent of mood, memory and maternal imprint, right? Now make that retrograde. Imagine your mind as a river that normally flows forward, taking in a new input, processing it, moving on. Mercury retrograde in Cancer is that river flowing backwards, pulling up slit from the riverbed, making the water murky with memories and feelings you thought you settled, right? The positive expression, your emotional memory becomes incredibly vivid and accessible. You can recall not just what happened, but how it felt, the texture of safety, the weight of rejection, the warmth of belonging, like a garden after spring rain. Seeds that were dormant for years suddenly becoming visible, breaking through the soil, not because conditions changed, but because the timing was finally right. This is gold for therapy, journaling, creative writing, and any work that requires you to access your inner child. Dreams become more vivid and more meaningful. Intuition becomes stronger and sharper. The body expression, Cancer, as it rules, the stomach, chest and breast. And Mercury retrograde here means the body speaks what the mouth won't. So you can have digestive issues, chest tightness, comfort eating, nausea that isn't physical but emotional. Your body is processing the words you are not saying. So the 8th rib, the body's part that this sabin degree rules, right, sits right where the diaphragm contracts, literally where your breath meets your gut. When you can't breathe properly, that's this transit talking. In the Vedic system, Mercury is stationed in the Parnavusu, that Sakra Pada 4, then the Sakra of return and restoration, ruled by Jupiter, activated when entering Cancer at the start of June. Parnavusu means return of the light, and its deity is Aditi, the cosmic mother, infinite abundance, the boundless space before form. Aditi Sakti, her power is Vishtuva Prapana, the power to gain wealth and substance again, the power of restoration, reset, renewal and return. And Parnavusu connects Mercury's retrograde directly to Jupiter, in Cancer. But when Jupiter, which is exalted in Cancer, is expanding the emotional path territory, Mercury retrograde makes you think about it, talk about it, write about it, process it through language and communication. The return becomes conscious, the restoration, the reset becomes a conversation, even if it's just a conversation with yourself. Think of it like that moment in Fleabag, the TV show, if you ever watched it. It's a woman that, breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the camera, except the camera is her own psyche, and she's finally being honest about what she actually feels instead of performing wit as a defense mechanism. Mercury retrograde in Cancer is when you stop being clever about your feelings and hiding from them and start being honest about them, right? So now I'm going to give guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising sign. So if you just know your sun sign, just read that. If you know your moon and rising, then read for those two. So all in all, you could read potentially 3 of these, right? So for Aries, Mercury is retrograding in your 4th house of home, family and emotional foundations. This is ground zero for this retrograde. Aries, when was the last time you actually sat still long enough to feel what's happening inside your own chest? You charge forwardly, brilliantly making progress, but Mercury retrograde in your 4th house is pulling you towards going backwards into the domestic space and realm, into family conversations you've ran and hid from, into childhood memories you've filed under doubt with when you actually just outrun them, and hid them. The retrograde slides into Gemini, your 3rd house, from the 7th of July, shifting the review from deep family roots to everyday communication, siblings and local environment. Your homework is have the family conversation you've been avoiding, not with fists and verbal aggression, but with actual vulnerability. So Taurus, that thing where you've been saying the same thing for months but nobody seems to hear you, or where your siblings keep texting about something you thought was resolved. This is what this retrograde is crystallizing, making clear. Mercury retrograde in Cancer in your 3rd house makes every casual conversation feel loaded with emotional subtext. So, you can experience technological glitches, back up your phone now kind of energy, miscommunications that feel personal, a sibling or neighbour needing something from you, or your internal voices and monologue, right, getting louder and moodier than usual. So your homework is say the thing you've been swallowing. Your throat's been holding it, let it out gently but completely. For Gemini, your ruler retrogrades through your 2nd house of money, values, self-worth before sliding back into your sign. So this one is personal, Gemini, right? So in your 2nd house, Cancer phase, the review targets what you value and how you earn. Financial agreements need checking. Your relationship with security gets questioned. When Mercury re-enters Gemini, your 1st house, from the 7th of July, it's identity review time. Who are you when your mind stops performing? Expect delays in payments, renegotiation rates or contracts, questioning, whether your income reflects your actual worth. And from the 7th of July, a full personal identity review where you ask, who am I? Am I being who I want to be? Cancer, Mercury stations retrograde in your sign at the 3rd degree of Cancer. So this is your retrograde, Cancer. The universe has put this one directly on you. The retrograde happens in your 1st house of identity, self-image and how you meet the world. Everything about how you present yourself, how you communicate your needs and how you think about who you are gets reviewed. You might feel like you're in an identity fog, unsure of your own opinions, uncertain of your own voice. When Mercury slides into Gemini, your 12th house, from the 7th of July, the review goes unconscious, dreams become vivid, old anxieties resurface, and the parts of yourself you hide even from yourself become visible. So your homework is to journal journal daily. Every morning write I am and finish the sentence without thinking. Track how the answers change over the retrograde, right? For Leo, you live in the spotlight brilliantly, but this retrograde pulls you backstage behind the curtain into the green room of your psyche, where the performance stops and the real person sits alone. Mercury retrograde in Cancer in your 12th house means your unconscious is louder than your conscious mind right now. Dreams become more vivid and symbolic. Old fears and secrets can come up to the surface, your own or others. Personal expression can change, so expect vivid dreams about family, intuitive flashes that feel important, the desire to withdraw from social life, and unresolved grief or sadness surfacing, coming up without an obvious trigger. So your homework is keep a dream journal beside your bed, write immediately on waking up. Your unconscious is sending you messages, stop ignoring them. For Virgo, Sun, Moon or Rising, wherever it lands for you in your chart, Mercury, your ruler, retrogrades through your 11th house of friendships, community and future vision. As your ruling planet, Mercury retrograde affects you more personally than most. Your analytical mind goes fuzzy, your systems stop working as smoothly. This is designed to get you out of your head and into your feelings about the people around you. When Mercury re-enters Gemini, your 10th house from the 7th of July, career and public image come under review, right? So watch out for that, and just try and be as gentle with yourself, stay grounded, do things to make you feel grounded, because your analytical mind can not think as clear as normal. For Libra, Mercury is retrograding through your 10th house of career, reputation and public life. The boardroom is getting emotional, Libra. So yeah, you were comfortable. Now Mercury in Cancer is flooding your professional house with feelings, career decisions that seem logical now can feel emotionally wrong. Your public image can get reviewed right now, so you may think, is the person the world sees actually the person you are? And when Mercury slides into Gemini, into your 9th house, right, from the 7th of July, the review goes to your beliefs and education, travel plans and your broader belief system, right? So your homework is write down your definition of career success, then cross out everything that isn't actually your definition of it, and every expectation you inherited, and see what remains. Who and what do you actually want to be and do, Libra? Okay, so for Scorpio, you know exactly what's true, or you think you do. Mercury retrograde in Cancer in your 9th house reflects every belief you hold about how life works, what's meaningful and where you're heading. Travel plans may stall, educational plans may need reassessing. The philosophy you have built your life around gets questioned, so you can expect some disrupted travel plans, rethinking about your educational and other goals, professional, whatever, questioning religious or spiritual beliefs and encounters, meeting people who hold different belief systems than you or live a different lifestyles to you that challenge yours. So your homework is identify one belief you hold that you've never questioned, then question it, not to destroy it, but to test whether it's truly yours, because we often believe things that we've been programmed to believe, right? So Sagittarius, Mercury is retrograding through your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy and transformation. So this is deep water, Sag, financial complications involving other people's money, old debts, emotional, financial, can come up, intense dreams about death or transformation, and the feeling that something is ending that needs to end can all come up for you. So Sagittarius, when Mercury slides into Gemini in the 7th house from the 7th of July, the review changes to partnerships and relationships, especially your one-on-one relationships. So think about them. Are you happy? Are you meeting the other person's needs? Are they meeting yours? Thinking about what you need to do to feel more intimate. Capricorn, Mercury is retrograding through your 7th house of partnerships and one-on-one relationships. Your relationship contracts are being reviewed, Capricorn, so you can approach relationships like business arrangements at times, and that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes we have to treat it like a business or we make mistakes, right? But Mercury retrograde in Cancer in your 7th house floods your partnership area with emotion, sentimentalism, nostalgia, getting sentimental, and your needs, which you will rather, manage than feel right now, because you don't like being sentimental at times. An ex maybe appear. Your current relationship needs an honest conversation, or if you are single, asking yourself if that's what you really want to be. The balance between independence and intimacy gets reset for you, Capricorn. So when Mercury moves into your 6th house, when Mercury changes into Gemini in the retrograde, right, from the 7th of July, daily routines and health habits come under review. Your homework is to ask your partner, if you got one, is there something you've wanted to say to me but haven't? Then actually listen to the answer. Or if you're single, ask yourself, how do you feel about being single, and what type of person would you like to invite in your life? Because we can't just be inviting any old cat, any old rubbish into our lives. But yeah, so Aquarius, your mind runs at frequencies most people can't tune into. So Mercury retrograde in Cancer in your 6th house slows that frequency right down and ask, how is your body actually doing? Your daily routines get disrupted. Work projects, store, health matters that you've been ignoring demand attention, especially anything involving digestion, tests, or stress-related symptoms, right? So expect schedule disruptions, technological failures at work, health symptoms flaring up, that are connected to you hiding your emotions, suppressing your emotions, and the need, the urge to completely change how you structure your days and how, your routine, basically, the things you do day to day. So your homework is for 1 week, track what you eat, how you sleep, how your body feels at different times of the day. And, this data will reveal what you've been ignoring. So for Pisces, Mercury's retrograding in your 5th house of creativity, romance, self-expression and joy. Your art and your heart are being reviewed, Pisces. So you can expect some creative blocks that are actually creative redirections and changes. Old lovers reaching out, children, if you have them, needing more emotional attention, or your inner child needing more attention from you. And the question that you need to ask is, what actually makes me happy versus what am I performing happiness about, So when Mercury changes into Gemini and this hits your 4th house from the 7th of July, think about your family and home dynamics and relationships, so yeah. Look after yourself, Pisces. Get real about what you need, what makes you happy. Take time out to reach your centre and find some inner peace. Now I'm just going to talk about the Vedic layer in a bit more detail. So we've got Mercury going backwards in the 2nd degree of Cancer, and it's in sign Johnson. It's just moved from Gemini, as I said, so it's transitional instability, learning new emotional language as it moves into Cancer. It's also in Virgo Tamara, Mercury in Cancer, and it's in the Cancer Navasa, as I said. So this increases our emotional communication, and especially communication that's aligned with our soul, higher consciousness, our deep needs, right? So it's in the Pushkara Navasa of Pavasu Pada 4, which is, nourishing our soul, healing our soul through, returning to previous communications, thinking about it, clearing it up, and by resetting the way that we communicate with ourselves and others as we move on in our life. Mercury is, weakened in Cancer. It's not, in 4, but it's still challenging here. And because it's in the 0 to 6 degree of an even sign, it's in the death state. So, it's not as vital as it can be. And as I said, Cancer rules the 4th house, so it's communication about our home, family, our emotional foundations, and to do with our heritage. And Aditi, the cosmic mother, rules this Natsakra, And Aditi is infinite abundance, you know, not just money and wealth and status, but true abundance of energy, vitality for life. And the mother of all gods and feminine energy that's boundless, space before form, before materialization, the soul, the consciousness. She represents the return to the womb you came from and is still waiting for you to return back. And her Sakti, her power, Vasutava Prapana, means gaining wealth and substance again. Not new acquisition, but restoration, renewal, reset, gaining back what was lost, recovery of what you once had, right? So Mercury, the planet of communication, intellect and business, station in retrograde in Aditi's Natsakra means messages return, conversations circle back, as I said, and the communication you need has been waiting in the place that you left it. So for some of you, you've left conversations that need to be finished. So it's reminding you of the need to complete things. And Punavusu is ruled by Jupiter, where Jupiter's in Cancer right now, so this is working really well, as I said. And Jupiter is about wisdom, dharma, growth, expansion, philosophy, higher education. Mercury is the analytical mind, you know, and Cancer is emotional truth, and Jupiter is philosophical wisdom. So the retrograde is saying, stop thinking of your way through your feelings, let the wisdom come through the body's memory. And Cancer, part of 4 is where this is all taking place, right? So Cancer actually rules this Namvasa and the moon, right? So it's reminding us of, you know, the wanderer, you, the individual, arriving at the feminine energy, your mother's door, not just approaching. And Mercury here communicates through remembering our emotions, especially, you know, the ones that we feel in our body, the words of origin of your family, you know, if you have a special language or a native language, the way that you use words and dialect, and also how communication feeds you, you know, and not just the debates that we can get into in our families that drain us, right? And also, and stressful transmission of messages, you know, what, for instance, your grandmothers or grandfathers or any relatives' hands or words taught. So Punavosu's symbol is the quiver of arrows, which are the tools for our journey or our dwelling house base, her home, right? And Mercury here is saying, put down your arrows, you have arrived. The journey was to get here home, to, you know, get to that emotional ground. And the Sabian symbology of the sailor putting up a new flag that rules the 6th rib, where breath meets feeling, you know, is reminding us of new ways to communicate, new emotional truths, and the pause before the return, you know, the Sadihi means Mercury has just crossed from Gemini, its home where it's comfortable with logic, speeding to Cancer, which is emotional, non-linear, non-rational, right, and is, you know, sentimental, soaked in emotional memories. And we're at the threshold because Mercury needs to pause and learn Cancer's language before it can speak it in retrograde. So the medicine, you know, is to allow our communication to come through, not in a way that's intellectual, trying to be clever, you know, we have to feel it, you know, not logical, we have to remember it, go into the body, you know. And Panavusu's restoration energy means the words you couldn't say before, the conversation you abandoned or rejected, the message you lost is returning now, as I said. So Mercury retrograde in Panavusu, you know, kind of brings to our attention communication that got buried under, trying to be smart, trying to get one over on other people, or they try to get one over on us, or where we just went into kind of name calling, verbal abuse as well. It may be painful for some of you, or you may replay these conversations inside your head, which you need to try to, you know, deal with, but not to dwell on too much, and to make sure you take time out to look after your emotional, spiritual, mental health, because old conversations can come back from 2009, emails you never sent bringing to your attention words you never said, apologies that you never said or people never said to you. Panavusu energy equals return, so things may come back what you wish was buried still, or just so you can get closer. And we're dealing with Cancer, so emotional truth can get in the way of our logical thinking as well. Mid-sentence, you can realise that you have been lying to yourself or others, or they've been lying to you. It can be just kind of like the feeling can just know what needs to happen before the mind catches up, and truth can just blurt out, from yourself and others, and lost language comes back, childhood words through your body language, dreams and symbols also can, some of you have to decipher the message that you're meant to understand right now, while Mercury's retrograde. So yeah, I went over the week, all over the place there, but I hope that all made sense. Just be gentle with yourself when the past comes back, basically. So collectively, we can just speak more collectively about who speaks for the feminine energy, mothers, maternal care, labour, going into hospitals. There's a lot of things that have been said in my country about mothers not getting proper maternal care and all of that. Also, tensions with immigration, the sense of belonging, whose emotional truth gets heard, and there just can be a lot of emotional honesty, preferred over strategic messaging. Politicians can't spin, the truth can come out. Corporations can't PR their way out. Your family can't avoid the thing nobody mentions, like truth can really come out here. And Panavusu is saying the only way forward is back to think back. The only message that works is the true one. The only language that lands is the one that feels like home and is dealing with truth, right? So to see where this retrograde is actually going to land for you, look at your moon sign, any current, transits that are happening, especially with any planets of you transiting in the 4th house or touching Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, any planets that's in the 1st degree, and especially your Mercury natal position if you got Cancer, Gemini, and Virgo, or aspects from Mercury to the moon as well. So yeah. So now I'm just going to talk about a bit more how this is actually going to show up in our day-to-day life. So contracts, as I said, financial agreements and property deals may need extra, scrutiny and judgment, and for you to check the details, really looking into the fine print, and issues around our home, as I said, you may want to put off signing any important contracts between the 29th of June and the 23rd of July, unless you have reviewed these, really, really properly, and for some of you, get other people help you look over any paperwork. Take your time with these 4 of these planets in retrograde by late July. The collective pace can slow dramatically, projects can get delayed, so can launches of new things, our culture can turn inward. So this isn't a good time for public announcements, new campaigns, or anything else that requires forward moving communication. If you work in caring professions, education or family services, expect the past to show up at work now. Former clients can return, old cases can reopen, previous colleagues can reach out and things like that, or just any trauma you felt that you dealt with over past cases or problems at work can come back as well. Not to re-traumatize you, even though it can trigger you, but for you to deal with it. There's things that, this is a time when Mercury's retrograde to deal with things that we have pushed down, especially everything to do with 3rd house, siblings, family, because Cancer's involved, communications, travel, short distance travel, that is, interactions with neighbours, stuff like that. So, in terms of our inner world, our inner monologue, conversation can get louder, more emotional, and more focused on past memories. Childhood memories can come up unprompted, You can find yourself thinking about people you haven't thought about in years. Dreams can become more vivid, symbolic, and often, have family members in them or childhood homes, friends, issues with rejection, abandonment, not feeling like you belong to a set of friends, all of that can come up. The inner work question isn't what am I thinking, it's whose voice is doing the thinking. For some of you, sometimes we can have our family members living in our head, so we have to pay attention and see how we can work through these voices and what they're really trying to say and what we need to try to let go of. So Mercury retrograde in Cancer reveals how much of our internal dialogue and voice is inherited. Our mother's worry, our father's pain, criticism, our grandmother's superstitions, our culture's shoulds and should not, the nation's beliefs and all of that. And we're not saying that, these are all completely wrong, but we have to understand that we have to choose our belief systems. So every voice sibling in succession TV show where it's about who's going to be the next manager, CEO of the company. Most of them are performing confidence whilst their father's voice runs every decision from inside of them. And this goes for a lot of us. Sometimes it's not ourselves that are living, it's our father or mother living through us. And this is why it's important to get down to the bottom of whose voices are there, so we can choose our voice, so deciding whether we matter. We have to start to love on ourselves, understand our communication, and to tell the difference between what communication is, what we want to say, or what we've been programmed to say. So now I'm just going to talk a bit more about the planetary conversations, what the aspects add to Mercury going into retrograde, right? So Mercury's making a conjunction to Jupiter at 3:36, separating, as I said, and this carries the Sabian symbol, game, birds feathering their nest. So this brings our attention to preparation, home building, making the nest ready for the eggs to arrive, making our home nice for ourselves, our internal home. So the retrograde is the review, like, did you actually hear it? Are you actually listening to your inner voice? And remember, Mercury conjuncts Jupiter again 2 more times during this cycle, on the 12th of July while it's still retrograde, and the 2nd of August when it's direct. So 3 meetings, 3 trances to align mind and the heart, right? The universe really wants you to get this message. So for some of us, we know what we need to do, we know what we need to change, get outside of our comfort zone, say these things, or just let some conversation just let some decisions just be in the past and move forward. But it can be hard for us, so it's about thinking about what you actually want in your life, especially when it comes to communication. Mercury also makes a square to Chiron, so the Sabian symbol for Chiron is a man successfully expressing himself in 2 realms, 2 spaces at once. So Chiron in Aries is the wound around self-expression, around speaking your truth, around having the voice that matters, and the square for Mercury means your communication, again reminding us that it can bump into, trigger our oldest pain about not being heard. And maybe a conversation went sideways a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, a year ago, as I said, words came out wrong, maybe the rule during this retrograde, and this can bring up the feeling of being misunderstood in a way that goes deeper than this moment, and that touches something ancient in you, so again, another spotlight on the fact that old wounds can come up, and we just need to be gentle with ourselves, healthy self-care, forgiveness of ourselves and others. And Mercury's biquintile to the moon's north node, which is 023 applying. This is the tightest aspect, which is nearly exact, and it's the only one still applying, all the rest were separating. So the biquintile is a 144 creative, sort of like magical aspect, right? It's the double quintile genius meeting purpose. Mercury forming, this aspect with the moon's north node at 9° Aquarius says your mind is being creatively redirected towards your growth evolutionary purpose. But here the flag doesn't just get replaced, it comes alive. Your identity isn't just changing, it's gaining wings. And Mercury retrograde is the creative process through which this transformation happens, through reviewing your thoughts, revising your words, rethinking your communication, being more authentic in your communication, communicating with purpose. And all in all, these aspects are having a three-part conversation. Both the Jupiter conjunction at 3:38 separating and Chiron square, meaning that, Mercury's already passed these conversations, right? The biquintile to the moon's north node is still applying, meaning the conversation is still building there. The separating conjunct square combination means the retrograde begins with material already gathered. You already know what needs to change. As I said, we often don't know what we need to change. It's just changing it that's the issue, right? So, you've already felt the wound, and this retrograde period is about processing both, the applying biquintile to the moon's north node, so is where the processing will lead to. It's leading for you, this Mercury retrograde wants you to grow, to rethink the way you communicate and the way you allow others to communicate to you, to make it more healthy, right? And it's, telling us to get more in line with our creativity, our higher consciousness, and to look after our personal selves on the emotional, spiritual and psychological level. Our mind is being rewired for the purpose of, alignment back into who we really want to be, especially on what we want to communicate and show up in the world as, right? So as I said, there's some transiting aspect patterns that are happening during this Mercury retrograde. So we've got a T-square between Pluto, Chiron and Jupiter. This is the deepest one. A cardinal T-square involving Pluto in Capricorn, Chiron in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer. So, it's about our wounding, Chiron, our need to grow, Jupiter, and our inherited power patterns, Pluto, in tension with our wound around us, asserting ourselves, standing our ground, and our emotional growth. So this aspect, is bringing that tension to the surface so we can think about what we need to do to change, and, forgiving ourselves for our past mistakes and forgiving others for hurting us as well, which can be hard to do. And the second T-square between the midheaven, the moon and Neptune, again helps us to seek emotional truth and to let go, especially on the spiritual level. This is the I don't know what I want to be when I grow up T-square, and Mercury retrograde makes it harder to think clearly about it, so some of you may have some confusion around your career and your image in your career especially, and it's just wanting us to, realise, helping us bring to our mind, like, maybe you don't know what you want to do, right? And that's okay, but just to think about, is the career you're doing the one you really want to, do? And are you allowed to express your emotional truth? And of course, we can't always be all feeling orientated at work, and, it's professional, right? But again, is the career you're doing really in line with your values? And the third T-square between the ascendant and north node and Mars and Uranus is a volatile one. Our identity and presentation, our ascendant is in tension with our growth direction, and Mars and Uranus demands sudden, stubborn action around, how we use our resources, our time, our money, our energy, and the value system. Like I said, Mercury in retrograde is wanting us to rethink our values, and with Jupiter in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer as well, it's the mother wound that is being, really, really accentuated, or our wound with our feminine energy and our emotions. So this energy, the third T-square, can bring unexpected disruptions and chaos to our plans, and this can feel personal right now, but remember that T-squares and Mercury retrograde are all about dealing with the tension, right, and going within and thinking before we act and react. So the T-squares create pressure points, areas where energy must be released through action, and during the retrograde this pressure builds, but the release valve is turned inward rather than outward. So T-square 1 is the most personally significant, with Pluto at one corner and Jupiter and Mercury, there as well, and the messenger planet becomes the processing point for this entire power, wound, growth triangle. So every thought you have during this retrograde is filtered through the tension between inherited power dynamics and habits and religions and cultures and beliefs, and your need to grow on the emotional, psychological and spiritual level. The third T-square deserves our attention because Mars conjunct Uranus in Taurus, right, is, unexpected energy coming at us. Anything can happen, as I said. Sudden changes in our finances, unexpected resources can come to, our attention. So money can come, time, energy, there can also be physical accidents if we're not paying attention because, Mars, even though it's been grounded in Taurus, right, but Uranus and Mars still together. So Mercury retrograde, says slow down, and Mars conjunct Uranus says now. So the friction between these two messages is real. One wants us to be impulsive, one wants us to think before we react and do things right. So expect moments where you need to act fast despite the retrograde telling us, to slow down and be cautious. And the combined effect of 3 T-squares during Mercury retrograde creates a pressure cooker, really, multiple areas of tension with limited external release. And this is because the release needs to happen internally through processing, thinking, journaling, therapy, honest conversation with yourself and others, allowing yourself to sit with discomfort rather than acting on it prematurely and being, impulsive, which Mars and Uranus can drive us to do. So Cancer, where Mercury is at the 3rd degree, has the Sabian symbol. Our Arctic explorer leads a reindeer through icy canyons, right? So if you just close your eyes for a minute and picture this big frozen landscape, canyons of ice and lots of ice stretched in every direction. Everywhere you look, it's just ice, 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 baby. And one person, an explorer, leading a reindeer through this impossible terrain path, right? Not riding it, not driving it, leading it, walking ahead, finding the path in territory where no path exists, right? So the core meaning of this energy is about dealing with, navigating emotional wilderness with nothing but instinct, courage, intuition, and the companionship of something deep within, and instinctual. The reindeer represents the animal self, the body, the part of you that knows the way out without thinking, and the Arctic represents emotional terrain that's frozen, feelings that solidified long ago, family patterns that became ice, conversations that crystallize into permanent silence. And at the 3rd degree of Cancer, this is still the very beginning of the emotional space, and the symbol says entering your emotional landscape, your emotional world, requires you to have the courage of an explorer, not the comfort of a homecomer. You're not returning to somewhere unfamiliar. You're entering somewhere frozen, somewhere you've been before that needs your warmth to thaw out, to get warm, to be dealt with. So on the Jungian level, the explorer is the conscious ego venturing into the unconscious, specifically the frozen unconscious, the parts of your psyche that were put on ice because they were too painful, too dangerous, or too threatening to the family system to remain alive. The reindeer is the instinctual self, the body's wisdom, the animal knowing that operates below thought. In Jungian terms, this is the relationship between ego and instinct. The explorer, which is your mind, leading the reindeer, which is your body, through the territory, the path, the roads that neither logic nor instinct can deal with and navigate alone. They need each other. So Mercury retrograde with this symbol says your mind is the explorer, your body is the reindeer. The frozen canyon is the emotional material you're about to rethink and review. Neither thinking alone nor feeling will get you through. You need both working together, trusting each other. So this works with Mercury retrograde because retrograde, is a backward journey, and this Sabian symbol makes the journey geographical, physical, embodied, lived. You're not just mentally reviewing the past, you're trekking through it, walking through it, trudging through it, leading your body through frozen emotional landscapes and roads that haven't been visited in years. The ice will crack, the canyons will echo, the reindeer will bulk and try to escape, but the explorer needs to keep going. You need to keep working with that emotional material that comes up, especially those around, your authentic self-expression or lack of it, or conversations and that need to be healed and situations that need to be resolved. You need to keep on going, not because the destination is clear, but because staying and ignoring it, numbing yourself to it in frozen territory, means death. Movement, even backward movement, is survival. So, maybe listen to a song of mine that I like is Dennis Brown's Revolution, and listen to how he sings about moving forward through impossible paths with nothing but conviction and rhythm. That's the energy of this Sabian. The reindeer moves to the beat of instinct and you follow. So, in terms of healing and growth, karmic patterns and lessons, Mercury retrograde in Cancer activates the communication wounds of your ancestral line, the things that were never said, the feelings that were never named, the truths that were swallowed to keep the family intact, the soul work. And Mercury retrograde in Cancer isn't just about your communication patterns, it's about the communication patterns you inherited, the way your mother went quiet when she was hurt, the way your father changed the subject when feelings got too real, the way your grandparents survived by not talking about the thing that happened, and Panavusu Natsakra deepens this work through its restorative energy. Aditi, the cosmic mother of Panavusu, is the one who receives everything back, not through control but through infinite spaciness. She represents the wound of return, the place where lost things are restored. So Mercury retrograde in Panavusu says the words you lost are returning now. The conversations you abandoned are circling back. Let them arrive. The return is the processing, like that moment in This Is Us when Randall finally says to his birth father what his adoptive parents could never help him articulate, the words that had been frozen in 3 generations of loss and abandonment, finding their way out through someone brave enough to speak them right. The karmic invitation for this second Mercury retrograde, we've got one more to go, is be the voice your ancestors couldn't be. Speak the truth that needs to be spoken, So now I'm just going to talk about the relationships and how this retrograde affects them in a little bit more detail. So in committed relationships, use this energy to revisit the conversations that got abandoned, not the ones that got resolved. There's a difference. Abandoned conversations are the ones where someone went quiet instead of finishing. In terms of dating and new connections, Mercury retrograde is classically a time when exes return, right? And in Cancer, it's specifically the exes who felt like family, the ones who got under your skin and into your bones. If someone from your past reaches out, receive the information without acting on it immediately, this retrograde is for reviewing, not recommitting, So if they come back, give them time, give yourself time to prove that they have changed, that the relationship could go in a better direction if that's what you choose to do. Do not rush into anything. In terms of friendships and casual relationships, old friends can come back. The group chat that went quiet suddenly can come alive again. Someone you haven't spoken to in years sends a message that starts, I've been thinking about you. Cancer retrograde energy makes friendship feel more like family, right? The boundaries between friends and family can blur, and this is not a bad thing, right? It can be beautiful because chosen family can deepen, or complicated, ones, the codependent ones, can disguise themselves of closeness. So it's important to tell the difference, between these. But so, be open to ending some friendships, restarting some friendships, So family dynamics, as I said, family conversations that have been brewing for months can just explode out right now, right? The family member who finally brings up the elephant in the room, and then everything goes to chaos, or it can clear the air, it can be a good thing. The memory that surfaces and changes how you see a parent can come back, or just appear for some of you. Old letters, photographs or recordings, text messages, voice notes, whatever, can make you feel like, oh my goodness, I need to deal with that, or make you feel closer to your family, as well. So it's not all bad as well, but ultimately family. Family power dynamics are being exposed, and wounded and expansion are happening at the same time. So the wounds can come out, but the growth can also happen through exposing the wounds as well. So it's not always comfortable, but it is what's needed, right? Yeah. Basically, that's it for family dynamics. So in terms of workplace relationships, things can get heated. Old workplace tensions can come back. People can get more emotional at work over the smallest thing. So it's very important to be gentle with your workmates. You can also sort of get closer to some of your colleagues as well. Through sharing your emotions, you may realize you've got something in common with a colleague that you didn't before, or relationships can get too intense, and be emotionally overwhelming. The boss can cry on your shoulder, and that kind of gets in the way of the power dynamic, but it can be a good thing, so because you could see the more human side of your boss, or people can see the more human side of you, and vice versa. So watch out for emotions in the workplace and deal with them accordingly. In terms of singles and self-partnered, this retrograde turns your intention inward rather than outward, and that's exactly where it should be. Because Mercury in Cancer retrograde is asking, how do you talk to yourself when nobody's listening? Is the inner voice kind or critical? Is it yours or a voice you inherited? The relationship that needs reviewing most during this transit is the one between your mind and heart. So get these two communicating honestly, and every external relationship can improve automatically once you learn to understand yourself and be centered in yourself and deal with your emotions rather than hiding from them. So in terms of our life development areas, in terms of education and learning, reread rather than read new material. Return to old books, courses or teachers you've already encountered. The insight you missed the first time can come to you now, and this can be a good thing. In our careers, it favours us learning through depth, going deep rather than just staying on the surface. And every area of our life as well, it wants us to not just understand the concepts, it wants us to feel them, especially in our home and environment. Wants us to clear out the attic literally and emotionally. Some of you, it may be best not to start renovations, review what needs doing, and plan. Reorganise your spaces that have become cluttered though, and create a corner of your home that feels like a sanctuary for you, right? In terms of the holistic toolkit and what to actually do with this energy, journal prompt, write things down, write the letter you never sent the email you never sent, the voice note, make the conversation, phone call, that's it, or have the conversation you never had. Maybe, write a letter to the person who owed you an explanation, an apology, or a truth. Write it as them, then write your response, and then let it go, or maybe even send it. It's up to you. You can also practice, breathing from your diaphragm. Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Breathe so the belly hand moves but the chest hand stays still. Do this for 5 minutes daily. You can put on music, maybe a song by John that I like, Feeling Irie, and let the rhythm guide the breath. Her music understands the body-spirit connection that this retrograde is activating. This directly works with the 8th rib activation of this Mercury retrograde that can help your nervous system process what your mind is reviewing. Maybe you can try this communication practice before every important conversation. During this retrograde, pause and ask, am I responding to what's actually happening or something that happened before? If the answer is before, name it. Say, this reminds me of, whatever it is, and, think about whether you really need to say it to that person or it's something you need to deal with yourself. In terms of practical actions, Mercury retrograde, back up your phone, your computer and all your important documents. Mercury in retrograde can target family photographs, home related paperwork and sentimental digital content. Protect your memories, back them up. In terms of some questions to ask yourself to help you with your inner work, let yourself sit with these in your body body, not just your mind. Feel these questions, as Cancer processes through feeling, not thinking. So think about what's the conversation you've been rehearsing, repeating in your head, but refusing to have out loud, If your childhood home could speak, what would it say about the family that lived in it? Whose voice runs your internal monologue conversation? Is it actually yours? And what are you sentimental, nostalgic for that actually never existed? And what does this sentimentalism, nostalgia, tell you about what you actually need? Because sometimes, we can be overly sentimental about things or rewrite history, right? And this is not, it's not really, really good for our emotional peace of mind, and for us to really, get to where we need to get to in terms of a conversation, and, to help us move on. Create that nostalgic thing that never really happened for yourself. It's probably pointing towards a deep need for love, especially, self-love, and, giving yourself that attention and care that you wish that you had before, So ultimately, the key takeaways, what to remember about this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, the second out of 3 this year, is the universe isn't, punishing your plans. It's the universe saying your emotional communication needs an upgrade, right? And your upgrades require a reboot, a reset. So, to carry forward in your heart, the sabin symbol, says it plainly. You're an Arctic explorer leading a reindeer, your emotions, your past through icy canyons, past memories, the frozen emotional territory you're entering, family patterns, childhood communication wounds, inherited silences, requires both mind and instinct working together, allowing your mind and heart to unite, your emotional, psychological and intellectual needs to meet as well. And there's 3 conjunctions to Jupiter and Mercury's making. So on the 17th of June, we receive wisdom from Jupiter. On the 12th of July, we review the wisdom that the first conjunction to Jupiter gave us, right? And on the 2nd of August, when Mercury meets Jupiter for the final time, we integrate this wisdom. So we've got 3 chances, during this retrograde to allow us to think deeply on our beliefs, on what we need to heal, our wounds with our authentic self-expression. The universe is being generous when the lesson matters, with this Jupiter energy giving us this chance to really, receive, guidance from our higher self, from podcast, books, whatever, from having those difficult conversations that we've been putting off, and the world slows down when Mercury is in retrograde, so we use the slow down rather than fighting it to review the things that need to be reviewed, and to do the things that we need to do to make ourselves get back in balance. So ultimately, as I said right at the start, this is a collective pause, wanting us to work more with our intuition and to name the feelings that we've been putting off, to have the conversations with ourselves, especially that we've been putting off, and to allow ourselves to feel and be guided by our feeling mind, and just to allow ourselves to be nurtured by nurturing ourselves. So yeah, I'm Imani, your holistic astrological life coach, and this has been all things Mercury retrograde. So yeah, take care and see you next time.